Original and a very positive interaction debate in this magnificent place. First of all, on what we heard on the presentation of the findings, it's very important to acknowledge the good work which has been done and the useful interaction we will have with the process, because we are in a process. I would like to say, first of all, that I see 4 quick points on a reaction to your work, which is, for my reaction, very, very instinctive, I would say. The first one is about the time dimension. Kai Schäfer has mentioned the idea that among the recommendations we could see a new approach to the partnership, the strategic partnership between Africa and EU, with a vision which is a 10 years vision instead of focusing only on bureaucratic failures on a 3 years basis. And I think we should distinguish very well between the framework itself, the joint strategy we have agreed upon between Africa and EU. It's no longer an EU strategy for Africa. It's a joint strategy which is a long-term statement on the two sides and not just a little action plan we can concentrate upon for 3 years, even though it has some merits. So I accept very much, and I take strong interest in these recommendations of looking at a 10 years perspective, taking stock, of course, of the first 10 years anniversary of the African Union and the APSA. So that's my first point. The second one is about, I heard that we have to look beyond the existing axis between Brussels and Addis Abeba. I can but agree to that. The little problem is that the devil is in the detail. How do we go about, in a very complex setup, in such an ambitious venture and partnership, how do we go towards involving the different centers of gravity of this partnership? I think we have already clearly gone beyond the axis Brussels-Addis Abeba. We are very often connected, all of us, to New York, to Pretoria, to Tunis, to other spots in the continent-to-continent relationship, particularly in the area of peace and security. But again, we agree to that. The problem is not to agree on something which is obvious. The problem is to find the clear, practical steps to achieve that. And we will work on it, but it is not as simple as it may appear. Third item, which is the key theme of this session, how to involve better the regional economic communities and regional mechanisms, as well as the civil society in the process. 2 remarks on this one. First of all, it's not a new finding. It is obvious that since, for instance, the Akosombo and Zanzibar process, whereby altogether the African Union, the regional economic communities and the EU have started to press all together towards more coherence in the various interventions regarding peace and security at regional or continental level. I think some progress has been made. The main progress, I would say, is awareness that there is a need to fill the gap between the continental level and the regional level, and of course to fill the gap of capacities between the RECs, the regional mechanisms, and the African Union as a whole, but also to fill the gap of how the European Union and other partners can help and participate in this process. And this is extremely complex, even though I pretend that we've made tremendous progress since the establishment of the African Union, the establishment of the African Peace and Security Architecture, and the recent developments around the instrument which is the African Peace Facility. But still, a lot of work to be done, and I take all the points made here. Last series of remarks here. I think this exercise you have undertaken has slightly not sufficiently addressed the fundamentals of our partnership, if I may. There should have been, in the beginning, a reiteration of the basic principles, because it's so easy to say that it is a very huge bureaucratic architecture run by bureaucrats beyond their scope of intervention and their daily work in their office in Brussels or elsewhere. It is true in a way, but that's not good enough. I think we have also to repeat that who could have believed that after the Cairo summit of 2000, we would have achieved together a shared principles partnership which has been agreed in Lisbon. And I think if we can criticize the way it is being implemented, we should not be remiss of the principles agreed when we look at it again, and even if we look at it in a fresh time perspective. So I think at a certain stage, when you look at again at the Joint Africa-EU strategy, our little Bible, if I may say, you will see that many principles are applicable, including in the peace and security partnership. Finally, I know that the Italian clock is ticking, but I am going to finish in 1 minute, and I can guarantee that I have not used my notes, because I have plenty of notes I am not using, so I'm shortening. My quick conclusion is that we need, in the debate today and in the future, to look at a number of other things which you have not addressed. Of course, we need to go for practical recommendations on how to better enable the civil society to participate. It's key, crucial, etc. But the civil society itself has to do its own work, and I have to be clear that the relationship and the institutional setup between the civil society in Africa and in Europe is suboptimal at the very moment also. So it is okay to ask the institutions to help, they will do it, but the civil society has to take its own responsibilities in identifying itself, making its capacity used properly, and participating also, pushing certainly the experts and the institutions, but also making itself efforts to associate itself with the process. Rex, I think we will come back to it. My final point is about two things: the security and development nexus and treating Africa as one. The security and development nexus means what? It means that in the recent times, over the past 10 years, we have much better understood that development and security are interlinked, and there is no borderline, no frontier between them. And therefore, bureaucrats and institutions have had the tendency to create instruments which have not recognized this continuum. I think we have to address that. The future thinking about the African Peace Facility has to address that. We are thinking about it, but we will need your help to continue this discussion. And the final point is about treating Africa as one. I would say it takes two to treat Africa as one. Why? Because in Africa, there is a lot of work to do, of course, but in Europe also. And in Europe, what we have not done, we have adhered to the principles, but we are not putting in practice those principles. Still fragmentation, still bilateral post-colonial policies of member states, still a territory approach to the problems in Africa. Mm-hmm. And in Africa, I think the Arab Spring has shown the way that when there is a big crisis, for instance, in Mali or in Sahel, it is not in fragmenting the approach that we are going to sort it out. And never, ever the Arab Spring did not give us the best example of how to address in the next 10 years a more integrated approach to the continental African problems. Thank you.
Okay.